I cannot tell if that's fuzzy or just all the lights. But hello, my little Titans, and welcome to another Hangout. I hope all of you are doing well. I'm doing pretty okay. I appreciate you guys being patient with me while I was away those couple of weeks. But I am back and I'm ready to talk with all of you. I have decided to see if this is going to work. I haven't done a live stream from my laptop in a while. The last time I did it, went crazy. Like it wouldn't work. So this is kind of an experiment for me. Oh, thank you, Wally. That's very kind of you. Plus, my phone was starting to be weird too while I was trying to live stream. So, yep, we're just going to bounce around and see what's working right now. I would love a different setup, but I don't have that. But what has everybody else been up to? You guys had a good couple weeks. Anything exciting happen for you? Anything new for you in life? I'm very curious to hear about it. Hello. Well, that's good. Congratulations on getting your new job. I'm sure it's been an adjustment, but I'm glad that you're doing pretty okay with it. Oh, thank you. That's very kind of you to say, Kendall. I know I haven't made, well, I've made videos. I haven't posted any in a while. Let's see. I went on a brief vacation last week, which is why I wasn't available. And just visited family. I had fun. And then this week's just been trying to get caught back up with everything at work and getting everything resituated at home and all that good stuff that comes with the end of a trip. So nothing too terribly new. Hi, Era. Good to see you. Yeah. I guess in its own way, it is fun. It's more fun in retrospect, not necessarily fun in the moment when you're like trying to handle children and new environment and finding a new normal, a new temporary normal in the midst of it. So, in hindsight, yeah, it was a lot of fun. In the moment, not so much, but I did enjoy my trip. I didn't change my hairstyle. I brushed my hair. I had I had washed my hair earlier today, just let it air dry, and then before stream I brushed it because it looked a little weird with it air dried. So I brushed it and then it did this, and I'm like, I'm loving it. My hair does all sorts of weird things. I've just kind of learned to go with it and tame it when it gets a little too weird, but it is what it is. Sorry, I can hear people outside of my neighborhood shouting, I guess. It seems to be a thing. They all kind of hang out on Friday, Saturday nights, and you can hear them. Wondering if you guys can hear them because it's crazy that I can, and I'm in my house. trying to think of anything I want to talk about because it's been a while. And it's like, as I've kind of not been super in the loop on like entertainment stuff aside from like the controversy with the Odyssey movie. And I'm just like, it's a fictional story about a fictional person, about fictional events, and people are taking it way too fucking seriously. I'm I didn't see anything wrong with who they cast in any of the roles. Like, obviously, if it's Christopher Nolan, he wouldn't have cast them if he didn't think that they would do a good job in the role they were going for. Like, so I didn't see anything wrong with any of the casting choices. And the people who did, the characters I had issues with, aren't even in the film for a significant amount of time. So, but it got me kind of thinking about, controversies or perceived controversies in other movies, other genres, because it's like there's so much critical acclaim for things. And then there's like the controversies that come with it. It's like, do the controversies outweigh the critical acclaim? Do they have any weight at all? Should we listen to like people who have those type of controversies, or is it more just like echo chamber kind of effect? Oh, nice, Era. I'll have to take a look at that. I haven't been around Discord much. But it's like, okay, Barbie. The Barbie movie garnered a lot of criticism from people who either hadn't seen the movie or who didn't really get the whole point of the movie. And I feel like it kind of took away, whereas people were like praising the crap out of Oppenheimer, another Nolan film. And it's like, yes, Oppenheimer was great, but why was it considered great? Was it considered great because of the actors? Because of the story? Because why? And why was Barbie criticized so heavily? Was it just people felt it was controversial because it was taking a feminist look at something? It was a purely like female led movie with the men in the support role and not necessarily a flattering one. But it's like, I've watched it several times. I think it's great. I love it. It's hilarious for one. Like the jokes, the meta humor is just peak, and I adore it. Um, I've watched Barbie more than I've watched Oppenheimer, and I do own Oppenheimer. I just haven't watched it. But I'm more drawn to the Barbie movie and the message. It's like the message is kind of like what Barbie's always been about, which is you can be anything. So maybe don't, confine yourself, I guess. It's like Barbie goes on this journey to figure out why she's having these thoughts and feelings all of a sudden. And she realizes that she doesn't have to just be like stereotypical Barbie. None of the Barbies have to be just that role. But if they're happy and comfortable in it, then that's okay too. It's like, and with the Kens were happy in their role until they realized there could have been more. And then they got to work within the confines of their world to be in better roles. And that's, like they said, it's kind of a reflection on how things work in the patriarchy in a way, where women have to learn to find their own roles within the confines they're in. So did the Kens, and I think that's what made men uncomfortable or other people uncomfortable. Hi, Jeremy. Was they were seeing that reflected and they didn't like it. But it's like, if it made you uncomfortable, maybe you should take a little bit of a closer look at that, because there's a reason it makes you uncomfortable. But what I really loved about Barbie's take on like a more matriarchal society, was that the Kens weren't oppressed, the Kens weren't hurt, the Kens weren't pushed to roles that were just, like subservient, I guess. they were just kind of left to do their own thing, and their own thing, they just wanted to like hang out at the beach. All right, bye, Jeremy. And they just weren't doing anything to contribute to society, but they weren't doing anything to take away from it. They were just kind of existing within it and doing their kind of own thing. So I kind of liked that, because it's like that's what people have said for a very long time, is like, if a society were to flip to matriarchal versus patriarchal, we would see men not in submissive, subservient roles. They would just kind of be left to, not necessarily on their own devices, but they would just kind of be left to figure out their own role, whereas women would kind of take over the bigger roles. The center focus would be more on the children and raising up the next generation and keeping people safe and all this. And this has been studied based on past matriarchal societies prior to the patriarchy emerging with, coincidentally, religion. But anyway, it just was so interesting that like Barbie is such a rich theological, philosophical, like topic. There's so many themes to it that people just kind of people just mistakenly brush over because, oh, it's saying men are bad. No, it was never saying men are bad. It was just saying like maybe the conversation needs to flip and we need to all sort of realize where our role really should be and where it should be most helpful, not necessarily where it serves one over the other. Which, again, they were not saying that the Barbie world was right. They were just saying that it's one example. But then Barbie and Ken at the end, they find their own roles within their society, their new roles. And they're like, instead of being Barbie and Ken, they're Barbie and Ken. They're separate entities, which was the whole point. It was like, you can find who you are and grow from that, but still work together, which was the whole point of the Barbie movie. It was showing like, yeah, you can be anything, like be anything, Barbie. But then you had Oppenheimer, which, again, I haven't really seen, but I know the general premise because World War II did happen. World War II is a thing. Oppenheimer was a real person. Oppenheimer did develop the bombs that we dropped on Japan. And then I kind of don't really like the movie idea, the premise, the whole idea of it, because I've grown up to learn that we did know that Japan was coming to, do Pearl Harbor, and it was known, it was allowed to happen, and it was allowed to happen so that there would be a reason to go into World War II, because people wanted to go into, like, politicians wanted to go into World War II. The people did not. So in order to get the people on their side, they had to have a reason. So they made a reason. And I'm like, after knowing that, watching them develop that bomb that they then dropped in Japan is like, I'm sure they had their reasons, but this almost seems like the best example I could come up with is like the Clone Wars from Star Wars. Because if you watch the series, the Clone Wars, that's funny. But if you watch the show Clone Wars, and I've said this before, and I'll just kind of give it a spiel, you're watching Dooku and Palpatine in real time play both sides of the war for their own benefit. And that's kind of what World War II got to when the US was joining, was they were playing the war on both sides to then come together for their benefit. It's like they were trying to play the home front, and like, oh no, they did this thing to us and we need to strike back. And then it's like they made backroom deals that it could happen. Like, okay, really? You you knew this was coming, you let this happen, and then you're still going to have the audacity to go out and say, oh no, this horrible thing happened. And it was a horrible thing. It shouldn't have happened, but they let it happen. Oh no, this thing happened, and now we are going to fight and we are going to get back. And they drummed up all this propaganda shit. They put, unfortunately, Asian Americans into concentration camps, mostly on the West Coast in California, that I remember from history class that we only briefly touched on that. When we have actor George Takei, I can't remember how to pronounce his name, so I'm sorry, recounting his time in there, and nobody really takes that seriously, and we really should. We were not blameless at all. And so I guess that's why I have a harder time with Oppenheimer, is like Barbie was taking a look at something that's going on, a construct, and showing the different facets of it, how it can work for and against groups, and how we can find some kind of middle ground, even if it's just middle ground for now. And then Oppenheimer's like trying to celebrate this thing. And I know that the character Oppenheimer, at least from what I've seen of it, was like, he didn't like the fact he was part of it. He was just like very back and forth about it, but ultimately he went through with it. And it's like, you went through with it. You, who held all of the cards, went through with it. And I get you probably were in a bind about it, but then it just shows more like how fucked up the situation was, of how twisted they had made it and how impossible they had made it for him to morally say no, because they didn't want that. And it's like, I just can't. I'm so done with finding out about how orchestrated events are, that it's like, holy shit. I'm not saying I'm like going to deny that we've been to the moon or anything like that, but it's like, some things just, you find out later where a lot of backroom deals happen. Like, I was watching a documentary not too long ago, meaning today, about Rupert Murdoch, who started Fox News. And I learned that he ran in the same circles as certain people that are currently in power, and that they were also responsible for getting a certain other person elected, that Rupert Murdoch's newspaper was responsible for getting, and his paper was the New York Post, getting Ronald Reagan elected. Okay. And then I was listening to a speech that Ronald Reagan was giving during his campaign that they played on the thing. And it's like, we are going to strive to make America great again. And I just went full fucking stop. And I went, no fucking way. So, and then somebody mentioned something about this one guy. He's like, he handed Donald Trump the playbook for like what things to buy and how to behave and do in the media. And I'm like, sounds like he handed him the playbook for a lot of things. And I think I've now figured it out. They were trying with this whole Trump thing, they were trying to recreate what happened with Reagan. And it's not working out as well. I don't think. It's very difficult to say what's working out for him and what's not. Just based on like the headlines and stuff, you get a very mixed bag of what's working, what's not working. So I'm kind of like, they were trying to recreate, like, I think their first term had better success. The second term so far has not. I don't know. Maybe it's going exactly as they want. Maybe it's not. Hard to tell. But it's like, you realize how interconnected things are. And then Murdoch is responsible for Fox News. He started Fox News after getting pardons, permissions, and waivers from Reagan to do it. There were only 3 before: ABC, CBS, and NBC. And then Fox came on, and that was Murdoch's. And there's a reason that Murdoch, like Fox, is so heavily one side of the American politics system, is because that was the side that gave Murdoch the money, the funding, and the waivers. Because apparently, according to the FCC, which is in charge of checks and balances on broadcasts and newspapers and stuff in this country, they said you can't do that. You can't own a newspaper and a broadcast. Like, you can't own your own broadcasting system. And so he got a permission. He got it waved away for him so he could. And it's like, oh my God. Once you step back, it's all connected. And it's not connected in a fun, good way. And oh my God, it's just like you can really fall down a rabbit hole. I can see where people keep falling down rabbit holes. I can see why people retreat from life sometimes, because it can really, like, you just realize it's all sorts of messed up. And it's very you realize, like, reality is not even really reality. Oh, I should have known that. I've only watched Attack on Titan in the Japanese dub. I've only ever watched it that way. I can't. I think I've said this. I tried to watch it in the English and couldn't. I only watched it in the J. I should have known that. But I think I was just too caught up in all of it and thought Aaron was just blowing steam, blowing smoke, whatever you want to call it. To really pay attention and take that into deep consideration with lasting overarching effects later. I still stand by what I said before, that Aaron was a Titan-like shifter thing before he even became one, because of that scene I showed you guys. I think I showed you guys that scene where Aaron gets into the fight and he comes away and his forehead's steaming, like actually steaming. And you could just brush it off as like, oh, that's a typical anime thing, but it's like, that's for Attack on Titan, that's not typical. So yeah, speaking of something that's super fucking interconnected, Attack on Titan is a great example of that, where all the events that we see have been orchestrated by somebody behind the scenes, which in this case was Aaron and his brother. And they made sure certain events happened the way they did, so that outcomes they wanted happened the way they wanted them to. And that they all culminated to the point where they could, you know, finally have their ultimate win. So there. Attack on Titan is a very relevant anime for more than just the obvious reasons, which is why I love it so much. Honestly, of all anime, I think that one and Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood is another one, also very relevant, that I love to death. I love to pieces. Like, there are very few I can say. I've watched quite a few, but there are very few I've watched that I can say without a doubt, like, yeah, this is top, whatever, not going to change my mind on it ever, kind of thing. And it's definitely that. I think another one is Cowboy Bebop, just because it's such a good story. It's something that I'm finding lately that's driving me fucking crazy. Yeah, he was. They weren't really hiding it. You just didn't want to believe it. They subvert the expectations, which is another reason why it's so good. Like, that's what I'm finding, is things are just starving for story. Like, it's so hard to find anything with a substantial story to get your teeth into. It's like, okay, there's a reason Supernatural lasted 15 fucking seasons, and it's not just because the fans are rabid. It's because it was actually a good show with pretty decent writing for a majority of it, that, you could sink your teeth into. Yeah, you can just come into it and understand everything, but if you did come into it, you got a good story out of it, and then you were compelled to go figure out the rest. And you could go back to the beginning and like watch it from the beginning and be like, oh my God, this happened, therefore this happened, and can keep going. That's why it lasted for so long. That's why, as bad as it ended, Game of Thrones lasted for so long. Is like, for a while, it had very good story. It had a very good storytelling component. Like, season 1, hands down, best season ever. Season 2 is pretty good, but we're kind of getting into shaky writing territory. You can kind of see where the cracks are forming. Season 3 for sure. And as we go on and on, it gets shaky and the cracks get bigger. But season 1 and 2 are pretty good. Vikings is another good show. Like, if you can name the show and people can know it, then there's a very good chance that it's a very good show and a very good story. That's why there's a lot like older sitcoms, older shows, like Friends, for instance. Like, as dumb as the premise is, even Seinfeld had some staying power because of the story. Like, you didn't know what was going to happen. It was a story about nothing. So you didn't know what was going to happen. So that was the fun part of finding out what the plot was in that episode. Like, storytelling has so much more to the staying power of something than I think people nowadays realize. They're all thinking it's like what grabs your attention. Like, no, if I can sit and, gnaw on the story for a bit, I'm going to enjoy it. Like, I watched the show The Librarians. That I watched that show and I almost wept remembering how good shows used to be. How like it could grab you and pull you in and like you cared. And like you also knew the stakes were kind of low. Like you kind of knew that the good guy was going to win, so you didn't have to like get so upset or so invested in the characters. You could just kind of sit back, relax, enjoy the plot, and know that because there's a next episode, things are going to be okay. I feel like Game of Thrones kind of ruined that, and now we have all the and Supernatural to a point kind of ruined it, where it's now all these like, oh, Gaspé, what's going to happen next? Who's going to die? Who's going to live? What is the plot twist? We don't need a plot twist. Okay? It's an hour episode. We don't need a fucking plot twist every fucking episode. That can be for like the last 3 episodes leading up to the season finale. When shit's supposed to get intense. Not episode 1. Okay? Not episode 1 of season 2 or whatever. Like, don't start with the plot twists. Save those for the end. Like, build up to that, and then the payoff's so much better. I get so sick of like watching shows and it's like there's going to be a plot twist. There's going to be a plot twist. There's going to be something that's going to like completely wreck it. It's all drama. It's all contrived drama. Like it's like a soap opera. Everything's kind of turning soap opera-y because they want to make sure that you're paying attention and that you're going to find out what happens next. It's like, why do I care? Because you're going to do something that's going to flip the script that I'm not going to even enjoy. And I'm not 100% invested in this. Like, I watch older shows. I'm fucking more invested in those older shows than I am in these newer shows, because at least with the older ones, there was a formula for a reason. The formula worked. And yes, there were plot twists, but the twists were usually pretty good. The writing was pretty solid. And there was a really good buildup to why it paid off after. Like, okay, God being the fucking prophet Chuck in Supernatural was a hell of a good plot twist, but they built up to that. They built up to it. They gave you breadcrumbs throughout. They weren't going to come out and say it until the very end when it mattered, and it fucking mattered, and it had consequences for this narrative. But at the same time, it's like, that was such a hell of a twist. It was good. It was a good fucking twist, and people were pleased with it. And no, I don't care. If I'm spoiling this, it's been out for years, guys. At this point, if you haven't seen it or you haven't been on Tumblr, then what are you even doing here? But that was a good plot twist. In Psych, that show had no plot twists, really. Like, yeah, the way he solved things was a little goofy, and sometimes it felt a little contrived, and somehow he put everything together. But it worked, and it was entertaining, and you knew Sean was going to get the bad guy. And the only times that we didn't was the yin and yang saga at the beginning, in the beginning seasons. Like, those were like the big ones. So it's like, you don't have to worry too much. It's really low stakes. It's fun. You kind of get some goofy like one-liners, some banter, but it makes sense and it follows through. And then there's some like continuity stuff throughout that, if you paid attention, it pays off later. It just, I miss that. I miss that way of watching shows. Now it's like everything's high stakes, and that's not really fun anymore. Like, that wasn't Game of Thrones made it fun, but then after everything went to like be like Game of Thrones, it wasn't fun anymore. It wasn't fun anymore. It's like The Boys kind of was doing that in their last season. I'm not going to spoil anything because that one is a pretty new season, but every episode was played to be high stakes, but there was no payoff. It was like they were teasing you and then they took it away. They took away any of the payoff, and it's like, why would you do that? Why would you set anything up and then do nothing? They kind of did the opposite in a way, but at the same time, they were still framing everything as like mattering and having importance, and you have to be invested in, oh my God, who's going to die now and all this. And it's like, after a point, you just don't care because every episode is like so stressful. Why watch it? You can just look it up online later. If it were like an easygoing kind of thing, or if it was something they were building up to, like you can have like an intense final season, but you kind of have to make it worth it. Like to continually tease and then have no payoff until the very end, when the payoff just feels kind of like flat on arrival, just because of how much how much of the bait and switch the entire season has been. You kind of did something wrong, because like they could have built up to the final couple episodes and it would have been awesome, but they didn't build anything. They just kind of like what they built up to, they killed off in the middle of the season. And then there was no momentum. There was really nothing to keep going forward. It was like, we're pushing it at this point. We're pushing the train or like pushing the cart. We're just pushing it at this point. There's nothing pulling, or it's just pushing, which is not good writing. You shouldn't have to push your narrative. Your narrative should naturally should come up and go back down. That is how it should go. At least that's how I was taught. And Attack on Titan does that very well. Anime does that very well. Older anime. Newer anime, kind of falling into this substance over, or the style over substance problem, where not as much meat to dig into with the story, which is sad. And, the last one I watched that was pretty good was Free Run. But because I got rid of Netflix, apparently for good reason, I will not be watching Free Run, and I don't have Crunchyroll anymore. So, yeah, it wasn't enough to keep me watching. It was good, but it just wasn't enough. There's some that are good, but they're just not keeping me. Like Attack on Titan, I would have kept my Crunchyroll for if there were more seasons coming out, which there aren't. And I can just buy the seasons I want now because they're all done, which I should do. But yeah, I'm just watching things and then seeing things, and it's just so much of a bummer. I don't know. It's just so much of a bummer to see how things have gone downhill, and then to realize how things are kind of being played out because of, yeah. Very depressing. And I guess I don't know. Unless you're pulling, like, are you pulling from my story to do that, or what are you doing? Actually, just tell me in Discord. I'm gonna go ahead and end stream because I'm getting kind of tired. But thank you guys so much for coming to the Hangout. I loved seeing all of you. I hope you have a great night, a great week, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye, everybody.